on? Good to see everybody.
What's going on?
I'm going to go through the roll here real fast. I got Josh Connor. I got Let It Rock fam. I got Uncle Al. Hold it. I got Josh Connor. I got Let It. I got too many voices up. There we go. Kyle Anderson's in here. Uncle Al. Shooting with Uncle Dan. Hey, how you doing, my friend? Kyle Anderson. Tibor 101. Lady B's Urbanstead. Modern refugee. Make sure that you're lighting my name up down there so I can see it. Because I'm on YouTube on my tablet, so I'll be able to see anything that you talk to me about. All right, tonight we're going to talk about power and SHTF and the different options that we can do. Oh, I got a couple of people trying to get in here. Hold on. Two of them popped out on me here. There, I got them. You guys in here now?
Yeah, I made it.
All right.
Yeah, it looks like we lost Reed again.
I think I'm here.
Where'd Reed go? I got him. It says he's here.
It just has a big circle.
I think he went invisible on his face.
Oh.
Yeah, he went witness protection.
Witness protection, yep. Yeah, talk about this. Oh, I got my paper turned the wrong direction here. Power for your home in SHTF situations, different ways of being able to put power together for you. Say that it's SHTF, the big apocalypse, or whether it be something like a flood or a tornado, something like that in your area. Some way of figuring out how to have power in your SHTF.
Yeah, I think the easiest and cheapest thing off the bat would be a generator, like a
Generator.
Yeah.
Generator. I was looking at one the other day. It's called Generac.
They're one of the better.
They run on either gas or diesel.
Yeah, Generac's made up in Wisconsin here.
Yeah, I was looking at them on the TV the other day. Man, that was a nice little thing. It'll light up your whole house.
Yeah, they come in a whole variety of power ranges. You can do your whole house, or you can break it off with like a 6 or a 10 circuit dedicated little switch thing, transfer switch.
That'd be nice. You don't wet that.
Dan.
All right, I think I'm back. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not.
We can hear you, Dan.
Yeah.
Hey, the cat's got my network cable for a minute.
Oh, you came back. Hello there.
Yeah, apparently my so.
Hi, Megan.
Be aware, Skynet getting Dan first.
Yeah, so as far as generators go, the bad thing about generators, the noise. All your neighbors can hear you, which is one of the reasons why my 20-year-old wants to build a box to put the generator in that is a soundproofing box and a Faraday cage as well.
My only concern with that would be the heat and exhaust.
Yeah.
Well, the exhaust runs out through a couple mufflers and stuff to quiet it down.
Right.
Actually, I have seen them done. Dug holes, put them in, and then they just run pipes away from the house and the generator so that it goes out like 20 or 30 feet and then kind of perks up through the ground intermittently, so it's not all coming out one hole.
Right.
Well, a lot of industrial generators, they have sound boxes and they're engineered for them. They can be surprisingly quiet, actually. It's really amazing if done right and engineered correctly. Like the one at our data center we have, Right next to it, it's about 50 decibels. And so a ways away, it drops off pretty quick. But like Gil mentioned, Gil, right? I'm not screwing that up, right? Yeah. Mentioned, like, say it's grid down, everything's out. Every sound is going to carry like forever. So even if you insulate it out real well, you're going to have to be careful with it, so like that. Now, side thing on that, if you guys ever get a chance, go to the Titan Missile Museum in Arizona. It's a Titan missile silo for Titan II missile and all that. It was neat. I went, did full tour and all that. They had generators down deep inside the facility. And it was neat seeing how they plumbed them to get the exhaust out and the cooling lines set up and all the electrical lines. It was a good educational experience. I filed a lot of it away in my head for like, if I could ever get a bunker, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah, my dad put the missiles in the ground, the ABMs that we have here. He took me down. You have to take an elevator to get down in there, and all the generators and all the electrical stuff is in there, and they have vents going everywhere. And it's quite the deal how they have that all set up.
It's a neat thing. I got tons of pictures I took when doing it. Yeah, there we go. I need to make a video about my experience there. That's what I should do next.
Yep. Yeah, when we were buying the compound here in Idaho, one of the things we were looking at was any of the decommissioned silos that were still for sale here in Idaho. They were all bought up, and nobody was selling them.
That's a bummer.
I heard a thing, that they're going to be starting to bring them back to life.
Oh, they wouldn't recommission those old silos, Will.
Oh yeah, they are thinking about it.
No, not for missiles.
Because there's a lot of the old silos that are around where I live now, because my dad worked down in this area where I live now. And I've been, when I go down to Colorado to see my doctors down there, there's missile silos everywhere. And you'll always see the government out there working on them. You'll see Air Force trucks, and then you'll see white contractors trucks at the sites. If you slow down to see what they're doing, they come out and stop you and ask you what you're doing there. So they're recommissioning them, and they don't want nobody to know about it. I mean, they followed me one day all the way almost home. I was shitting bricks, excuse my French, because I thought that they were going to come after me just for looking at them. All I was doing was looking at them.
I speak a little French, and that sounded like shit.
Yeah, it could have been, I guess.
Anthony, is that a Russian hat thingy that you're wearing there?
The other thing is, if you live close to a stream or a river, you could actually do something with water,
Oh, yeah, water wheels, water turbine.
Yeah, water turbine, yeah.
The
You
problem
don't
is
actually need a fast-moving stream either. You can have it where it pulls the water off to a sideways, and then you have this shelf it goes out onto, and then there's a drop, a pretty good sized drop it'll go down to, and that can generate a fair amount of velocity to run stuff really effectively. So you don't need like a fast-moving stream. You can actually manage it out a ways.
And not only that, you can also, you don't have to run it as a 110 or 220 generator off of it. You can run a 12 or 24 volt generator, and like you're charging a battery bank, and then run off your battery bank with your inverter. That way your battery bank acts as a buffer.
Yeah, that's actually the better way to do it.
An alternator, or maybe two alternators, and charge batteries off of it so you could run your solar panels or whatever,
An alternator is a good, like an emergency thing, but it's not a real good permanent generator. There's the way they operate and the way you want the generators to work is quite different, actually.
Yeah.
High RPM.
Yeah. I mean, and they're not permanent magnet generators and stuff. So that does
charge batteries.
Well, somewhat. They have also their own internal voltage controller system. And in generators, you don't want that. You actually want to go into a charge controller to have it manage it, because it won't top up the batteries correctly, especially if you try to put several of them together, you run into a lot of problems.
So what, you're talking like a power inverter?
No, a charge controller is what regulates the charging of the batteries. So like a turbine for like a water system and all that, they are just pretty much a raw output. And like Gil said, they're DC current, the ones that you most often want. And they go into the charge controller, and it is what manages that turbine. And if you have several of them together, it manages it correctly. Alternators you would have to literally take an alternator apart and redo its internals to get it to work that way.
Just
Yeah.
change the diodes in it, right?
When I back for Y2K, I was working over at the Bank of America's main data center, which was in Concord, and they had a 5-building campus there. And on top of one of the buildings, they had 7 locomotive diesel engines up there powering generators. And when I was working with the PG&E guys on it, they said that there was enough power in those generators to reverse feed to run the city of Concord off the data center. But the way the data center worked is the PG&E line came in, went into a through transformers and charged huge battery rooms. They're just big old rooms just full of batteries. And then it would come out of the battery room through inverters, and then it would feed each of the 5 campus buildings. And that way, when the power went off, they were already on the batteries, so there was no spike or anything. And then the generators, 1 or 2 generators, would kick up to charge up the batteries.
Yeah, that's called double conversion. We do it all the time in the telecom industry and stuff. It converts the AC into DC, and then we run off the inverters the whole time, and they take the DC to AC. It's more complicated to make, but it's far cleaner power. And there's no lag in the switchover; it's always running.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why they liked it so much, is that no matter what happened to the power from PG&E, there was never a spike of power hitting any of their computers there.
Yeah, you can actually get a really big surge, and it would destroy the DC converters, the AC to DC converters, but the chances of that going into the DC system and then going to their equipment, almost zero.
Yeah.
So what, the diodes couldn't be changed around in the alternators to make them apply to like batteries?
No, there's actually a
reads our
regulation circuit inside of them.
You were going to tell us about how to repurpose batteries. How's that go, Reed?
Well, all sorts of batteries and stuff. Well, like so one of the real common batteries we're going to find after SHTF is lead acid batteries. I mean, they're going to be in cars all over the place. Now, the only problem with the lead acid batteries in your car, they're a starter battery. Starter batteries generate a lot of power, a lot of amps for a short duration of time. They're not made for a deep cycle and so like that. However, if you see guys with big pumping stereos, you know those guys, they might have a deep cycle battery, so check out their cars. a lot of those guys like a deep cycle battery to run their stereos for a long time. So go hunt those up. However, we can take a lot of car batteries and take them apart carefully. We're dealing with acid and everything else, and you could actually melt them down and remake new lead acid batteries, but not for this stream. And I will have to make a video about that because that's a long, complicated process. But
Long, complicated.
It's effort. I mean, it's not simple, but a lead acid battery is something very achievable for people to do, because you're talking about a battery technology that was invented in the 1800s, like 70, 60 something. I mean, it's old, and it's really not that hard to build one. They've done a lot to improve the technology over the years of lead acids, and actually you could do a lot more to improve it even further. But you could build one that is quite serviceable for yourself with some effort. It's very possible to do. The other thing you also should look up is telecom buildings, places with computer centers, stuff like that. Those places are going to have deep cycle standby batteries. Those are good, high-quality batteries you can use for a lot of energy purposes. They're going to be big, and they're going to be ridiculously heavy.
Oh, yeah.
I've seen cells weigh 400 pounds. I mean, they come in on forklifts, and it's one battery. They're massive. So you're going to want to look for ones at least you can move with a couple people and then put on a cart and haul back or something.
Hey, Reed?
Yeah.
Along that line, construction equipment, dozers, excavators, the big ones. I'm not talking about Kubota and stuff. I'm talking Caterpillar and John Deere. They have 4D and 8D battery. An 8D battery dry weighs over 100 pounds. And when it's loaded, it's with all the electrolyte in it, it's I'm trying to remember. I think it's 162 pounds.
Oh yeah, those could be deep cycle. The key thing that determines how long these batteries are going to last in use is the thickness of their lead plates.
Yeah,
that thickness is vital to determine how long these can last. Now, if you look in the commercial sector, like you can buy a Trojan industrial brand. They're made for forklifts. They're made for like other stuff Gil mentioned. Also Rolls 5000 series and Solar Hup 1. Those are all batteries with very thick plates, and they can do over 2,100 cycles at 80% depth of discharge. I mean, that's a heavy duty battery. That's basically a 10-year battery service cycle at that for a lead acid. And if you actually only did a 50% depth of diff cycle, you could probably get close to 20 years off of them. So a lot of times when people think of lead acid batteries, they're thinking of the stuff in your car, other things we use that people are exposed to a lot that don't last very long. But real heavy duty lead acid batteries can last decades. Yes,
Yeah,
so you could actually use the smaller ones just to get you by while you're out searching for the bigger ones, right?
Yeah, you can do that. You can do that. Just
and then how about the big truck batteries? You know, like the 80-wheeler trucks they have.
Yeah, those are usually like 4D batteries or 8D batteries as well.
It's going to depend on what they've got installed. Some guy may want a heavy duty system so he can run air conditioning all night, and he's got all this stuff set up, and it's real good quality batteries. Someone else may have cheaped out. I mean, you're just going to have to look. You never know.
Because those can hold pretty good charge if they're charged all the way up, you know.
Yeah.
Well, charge doesn't matter much. I mean, you can push. I mean, what you're actually looking is how much the storage of the battery is. Like, you know, I've got batteries at my house that they hold 200 amp hours cells. And I mean, that's a heavy duty system. And then you've got others, you know, you can get a standard car battery. It says, you know, do 700 cold cranking amps. Well, but, you know, if you actually put a real, you know, heavy load on the thing, it can do like 50 amps for maybe an hour, maybe. And then it's dead permanently.
Yeah. Back when I was working for a construction company back in the late 80s and early 90s, I would get their old 8D batteries when they changed them out off the cat dozers and stuff. And we ran a haunted house, and we ran it all 12 volt on these old, quote, dead batteries. We just, we put new electrolyte in them and get them charged up, and they'd run 3 or 4 nights running all the electrical for the haunted house, all the lights, sound equipment, everything before we had to charge it up again. So those 8D and 4D batteries are some really heavy duty ones. The 8Ds I think were 400 amp hour batteries.
But that's for like a track hoe or a bulldozer, right?
Yeah, they also use them in the big Peterbilt trucks.
You got something, Dan?
Well, I've got plenty to say about the topic. First thing that I'll say is, I'll pose a question to the group and to the audience, and realistically, if you're talking about a long-term grid down situation, what are you going to want to be powering? That's the first thing you need to ask yourself. How much power do you actually need? Because how much electricity are you going to be wanting to try to generate? Are you going to be wanting to generate enough electricity to keep lights on, to keep refrigerators up, and to keep everything charged? Or are you going to want to go back to the old standard of living, to where you don't really need to rely on power, where you're going to be digging your root cellars, you're going to be using oil lamps and fire and this, that, or whatever. Because personally for me, I don't have a huge power supply built to be able to keep me going for months and years on end, because I don't see that as I think that's going to be more of a hindrance than it is going to be to you, putting so much time, effort, and resource into maintaining your private electrical grid, protecting your private electrical grid, because you are going to stick out like a sore thumb at an occasion when your lights are on and nobody else's are. When your refrigerator is humming and nobody else's is, because it's inevitable right there. So realistically, for me, my power needs are enough to keep my communications up, so I can keep my ham radios charged and powered, and to keep the deep freezer cycled enough to where I can keep stuff frozen just for meat preservation. But realistically, once you burn through your meat stored, hunting is not necessarily going to be a feasible option if the entire country is taking those resources away. So how much power do you actually need to generate for yourself?
Well, not to throw a giant wrench into people's plans, but remember, if you go living back primitive like that, you're going to die like the primitives did. Disease will kick off and all that stuff. The labor to farm is going to be massive. It's a very hard life.
Well, when you start living, if you live too high off the hog, and your neighbors see you living that high off the hog, you might not have a mortality rate of too high then either, because they'll be coming.
Your lifespan's going to be a lot shorter if your lights are buzzing and nobody else's are, though. Because you're going to have to have. You're literally going to have a small. You're going to have a small to medium-sized army to be able to protect that power.
Yeah, one of the things that we've done here, we all the windows here in the main house on the compound have blackout curtains on them, and some of the windows we've just put aluminum foil over them, because we don't, like for the kids' room, because if they go down to take their nap and they're on the south side of the house, so it's bright and stuff, they don't go to sleep. So we put foil on it and block out all the light, and so they go down for their naps. Well, that'll work just the opposite too. When the light's on inside at night, you can't see any light coming out.
That's true, but at the same time, you're not going to be spending your whole time in the house during the day. You're going to be finding more things that you got to do outside, getting everything ready for winter or
right.
Things like that. You're going to be outside more during the day than you are at night. So it wouldn't really do you any good to have all of them covered up, except for when you're in the house at night, when people think, well, over there, they've got light every night, But you're right, where you're coming from, it'd be perfect. Just cover them up with dark curtains or plastic or something like that. How about you, Josh? What do you think?
I think it's a pretty valid idea. There's a company that lives just a little north of us and is a U.S. solar mount, and the guy name is Eric. He's the CEO. He came over to our house to kind of do an assessment and kind of give us a price quote, because we were looking into solar. And like they said before, the battery is probably one of the more expensive things, and they build a custom battery to basically fit your needs, and everything kind of has to be balanced so that you use the appropriate amount of the battery and be able to charge it too. So, for us to run a house with between 20 and 30 grand for a solar setup. So, but then it's done right, and you're not doing the kind of you're not half-assing it, I guess would be the term.
Yeah,
he's talking French, Anthony.
As far as like our usage here, if it's a total grid down situation, most likely the only things that we're going to be keep running are going to be the freezers and the refrigerator, and maybe one of the small TVs with a Blu-ray player for the kids to keep them entertained at certain times of the day. But as far as lights go, I got it out in my cargo containers. I got 24 oil lamps and a 55-gallon drum of kerosene.
What did that run you for the kerosene for 55 gallons?
Well, I got it years ago. I can't remember. It was when I was working with the construction company back in 89. I got it because I'd already got married, and the kerosene's still good. I test it all the time. It's got maybe a 1/4 inch of water that has built up in condensation on the bottom, but I put some diesel treatment in there because kerosene's very close to number one diesel.
Yep.
Right.
And so, like I said, I've had no problems with it. In fact, I've even used it a little bit. Take like a half gallon out to to put it in my Coyote tractor to winterize the fuel system of my Coyote tractor.
Oh, okay.
So, but when you get it in a 55-gallon drum, was actually where I got it from. I got it from a wholesaler, so it was less than it was at the pump for diesel.
Well, that's not bad at all.
So you got a whole 55-gallon drum of kerosene.
Yep. And I also happen to have a couple of kerosene area heaters. Those little ones. That's like the kerosene you just put for heating up the living room if we need to. But we also are putting in a wood burning stove in the basement.
Oh, that'll be nice.
Yeah.
I'll tell everybody out in the side chat that my person usually watching the stream is out. So if you could put your questions or comments in capital letters, I'll try to pick them up as we're talking here.
Okay.
So I'm old, so I need a little help.
Looking at the side chat, I personally think that Tibor and Shooting It with Uncle Dan are making some pretty valid points in the side chat. They're talking. Tibor brings up the idea, the concept that Big Brother is going to be around after the grid goes down because they're bunkered in, they're hunkered down, they've got their technology set up. And you're going to be putting off a pretty big footprint and a pretty big signature if you're running power. And then Uncle Dan brings up another good idea that if you're planning on running a freezer for long term, you really should consider the alternatives of being able to cure your meats and to be able to other way other than relying on your freezer. Because like my biggest concern with keeping and maintaining power, I talked about it just earlier, is that if you're talking long-term grid collapse, power's not coming back for years. While technology obviously has its place, you have to recognize no matter what kind of security force you have, no matter what kind of Billy Badass you think you are, there are meaner, louder, rougher and tougher pit bulls out on the block than you. And when those pit bulls get hungry, they are going to come and they are going to take your stuff, and they are going to shorten your life expectancy greatly if you're painting yourself with a target as far as having that power up. So I think it's important now to understand the benefits of focusing on geothermal, on focusing on on your water wheel to run your mill and stuff like that. Because if you can build a geothermal, earth ship type of home built into the hillside with your south-facing windows, so that you get your solar to heat your home throughout the day, and you don't have to run fans, you don't have to run AC, this, that, whatever. You're going to be so much further ahead of the curve than the people that are going to be, trying to rely on trying to put Band-Aids on cancer type of thing, because like trying to keep your power up, it's going to take so much resource, and you're going to have a massive security force if you want to keep the wolves at bay, because there are going to be some really
if you think about
out there that are going to want to come and get your stuff.
Well,
The
Dan,
people in,
sorry,
in
I have to
Alaska
say,
have
I
smokehouses. They smoke
totally
their
disagree
food.
with you.
You know, in Alaska, they have these huge smokehouses, and they smoke their food. They're like fish and the small animals and stuff. They smoke them and cure them that way, you know, so they don't have to rely that much on refrigeration and stuff. Uncle Dan brought that up in the side chat out there.
Well, the other thing too, as far as the meat goes, you can meat in the jars.
Yep.
You can cook it, can it, and do all sorts of stuff with it. You can make automatic, do a whole meal already in a jar and just keep it canned there till it's time to use it. We had some friends that were moving from California to Texas. They're retiring, and they're going to go live down there where their kids and grandkids are. And they got rid of all their canning equipment and stuff. We took it all.
Oh, good job.
And so we got like 12 cases of quart jars, a couple cases of half-gallon jars, and that's on top of what my grandmother left me and what my mom left me. We probably got well over 300 jars. We just got my wife to she just has to learn how to can.
Now you need to make a cellar for it.
Yeah. The thing is, on your power, to keep the wolves at bay, the best way to keep the wolves at bay is not be seen, which means you have to black out your windows, not be, not have a stereo going. You need to use the power very frugally for only what you really need it for.
Yeah, most folks are going to be out looking in the daytime. The other folks are going to be out looking, foraging for food and stuff. So you should probably be doing what they're doing. Just not to let them see that you're taken care of, Wear old grungy clothes that are baggy on you and stuff. So that, so that you look like you're in need of food and shelter just like them,
Yeah, baggy clothes are great in a Twaki situation because you look like you're losing weight. One of the things talking about the batteries and stuff, inverters and stuff, I'm going to see if I can.
All right, thanks, Greg, and thanks a lot, Jason. Appreciate that, my friend.
I'm not sure if you guys can see this very well. This is my Kodiak solar generator, inverter, lithium battery system. I can actually run my camp trailer off of it. It has a 30 amp plug for it, and I can run my camp trailer off of it. So long as I don't turn on the AC, I can run it for 2 days without charging.
No way.
If I have a 100 watt solar panel on it, I can go a whole week before it finally gets down low enough where I got to turn off. If I have 200 watt panels on it, I'm good.
They have some pretty good solar stuff out there on the market right now that you can do that once you get it charged.
Take a real quick pause.
2-3 days at a time.
Sorry to cut you in, Will, but I want to take a real quick pause to send a thank you out to Think Dragon for the super chat that he just kicked down.
He just kicked out another one.
And the second super chat that he just kicked down, that's awesome. Thank you very much for supporting for supporting Just in Time. That's huge. That's great stuff, man.
Think Dragon's a good channel, you guys. You should go there and check him out. He is like a brother to me. I've been going over there and hanging out with him. He does live streams, but he's pretty good at them. He's the auctioneer. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it, my friend.
Game on. I just wanted to say thanks to the supporters there. So
I appreciate that, Dan.
Now, other power going now. Let's talk about my solar generators, solar panels. Solar panels are a double-edged sword. If you have them out where everybody can see them, they're going to know, hey, he's got power for solar power or something.
Yep.
You need to find some way of not advertising that you have power with your solar panels. With my cargo containers, I can lay them flat on the cargo container and nobody will see them. However,
on top of it, right?
On top of it, yeah. However,
and then you could have some sort of hydraulic that would lift them up.
Well, see, I don't even want to lift it up that, anybody can see it coming up. If I can lay them flat. But the problem is come wintertime, and when that white fluffy stuff comes down on top of them, they're useless then.
Yeah. That's why I said if you had something that would lift them up, it would keep the snow going down off of them.
Yeah, problem is when they lift up, then everybody can see them. However, in the wintertime, when it's that cold, I don't need my freezer. I can just put the stuff outside and freeze it tight overnight, or I can just, open up the freezer at night, let it cool down everything else, close it down during the daytime. But you got to think really outside the civilized box when it comes to.
I think another thing we need to think about or talk about is wind. Wind
really
for power.
Really expensive and really hard to maintain, and not a lot of output unless you're living in maybe a really windy area.
Mm-hmm.
That would be good for a backup plan, though. Do you think, Josh?
Honestly, I would say solar's number one. Water becomes maintenance because you got moving parts, and wind is also moving parts. So look at all the wind generator fields they got out there now. A lot of them are failing because they don't got the government.
Because they don't turn, yeah.
It's one of the most expensive things to have.
We have a gazillion of them here.
Yeah.
I hear that from everyone who has a small wind turbine, that they're a pain in the rear end.
Only one I ever really heard anything good about was a guy had one on his RV. And he said he used it when he was traveling between point A and point B. He used it to power his batteries. And then when he got to where he's going, turned that off and then used his solar panels.
It's good, but like the concept too, again, you're putting something with a mechanical moving part versus solar, which is really just passive. Eventually, your solar run, the solar cells have a lifespan too, but so does the battery, but it's less mechanics. You're taking something that's got to rotate, and those big wind farms use like really specific, I don't know if it's like a lithium grease or whatnot, but the maintenance is so high that I foresee those big wind farms without any any government contracts or anything else, they're going to start burning out. It's just one of the nature of the beast. You put something that rotates on there and it's going to break.
Bear Independent just did a video recently about the wind turbines. I guess he did a lot of the install on them, and I could be grossly misquoting this, so please forgive me if I am, but I believe my takeaway was that to be able to balance the book of the amount of resources utilized to be able to install and put up a single wind turbine, that wind turbine has to be spinning for like 48 years to be able to get back to where it's actually generating a positive amount of power.
Right.
But they have to be remanufactured every 20 years.
Oh,
you're going to have to go through at least one remanufacturing before you even start to see any sort of the benefit actually being yielded from the wind turbine, because of the amount of concrete that it takes to set the footings, the amount of copper that's had to been used to run the lines and everything right there. I just don't see wind as a feasible alternative that's going to truly be able to keep you up and running.
Yeah, the problem with those big wind towers is that they're big, they're ugly, everybody sees them, and because they're so big, there's so much infrastructure to support it. There was an article I read several years back on a helix coil system. Basically, it was horizontal, not vertical, and it was one of those twisted things. Basically, it could only go so fast, and it moved when there was hardly any wind, and it didn't overspeed. And I guess the company got bought out by some company in China, because now they're all coming from China. But you can mount one horizontally on the peak of your roof, and especially if the wind was coming towards the slope of the roof, and a light breeze, and that thing we be generating a lot of power. And because it's horizontal on pillar block bearings, it worked a bit better, and there was it had a longer lifespan on it, and it was relatively really cheap to put in.
Somebody was thinking outside the box there, huh?
Yeah, and of course the Chinese jumped right on it and snatched up the company.
No, they would never do that.
Yeah, that was under the previous president that happened.
Oh, you're in trouble,
Intellectual
Josh.
property theft from China? No way.
Hey, Josh, you're
Yeah.
in trouble. The missus is in here.
Yeah, that's what you said.
What do you guys think about combustion generators then?
Combustion generators,
Yeah.
like fuel
Yeah.
or like wood gas.
It could be fuel, it could be wood, it could be steam.
Well,
I mean-
it's going to be loud. I mean, I think we talked. I'm still confused.
Well, like what we did in the military in the field is we kind of did that. What we talked about before was dig a shallow pit, and the sound going across it deadened the sound quite a bit. I mean, I think you could probably justify or try to make a wood gasifier one. I don't know how well that would work. Long term, it's again mechanical, and again you're dealing with noise, but some of the Honda generators are really actually quiet, just the way they muffle everything. I know our neighbors got
inverter ones. Yeah, those
Yeah.
are quiet.
he
One
make,
thing
he's got
about the fuel generators is you only have to turn them on when you need them.
right. I mean, the neighbor's got one that runs his little cabin. It's like maybe a 3K, maybe a 5K at most, and you wouldn't be able to hear it beyond 50 feet from the house.
And if you put it in some sort of box, to help deaden the noise, that
Oh, yeah.
really helps out a lot. Well,
So, I mean,
you mentioned gasifiers. On a side note here, during World War II, when fuel became a problem for farmers, there are a lot of pictures out there, if you go looking for them, of farm tractors and farm trucks with gasifiers built on the front bumper. And so they used, instead of buying fuel, they put all the wood chips in there and made a gasifier to run their tractors and their hay balers and their farm trucks.
I mean, I think it's doable with the older equipment.
And they did that, they were running those, well after the war was over as well, because they had it done. They just kept using it till it finally gave out.
The gasifiers
Right.
have a lot of interesting little limitations on them. But today, with all the fuel injection, you would have a heck of a time trying to get it to go there. I actually think one of the better things to do would be to take the wood chips and all that other stuff and all the biomass and heat it up and pull and get the gasification out there, distill it, turn it down into methanol, and then you get a carburetor set up to use methanol.
Yeah, that is one way.
Absolutely.
There was, I forget whose YouTube I was watching over the weekend. They were at a farm show, and one of the booths there was a gasifier that was set up to go with a generator, an 8,000 watt generator. And so he was powering the generator off the gasifier.
Mm-hmm. Well, see, one of the big problems you run into on gasifier systems is, okay, so you're making gas and all that. Well, you can't overpressurize them because otherwise they'll stop or they'll flood out the engine. So you got to kind of meet the heat load with the demand of the generator or engine. So if you have a big change and like you need to move the throttle up real fast, the gasifier takes a while to catch up and so on. It's a complicated little issue on that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they don't work. We obviously know they work.
Right.
I just have kind of a narrow range I see for them using on that. I just think it'd be better if you can to convert like biomass into a liquid fuel because we know how to manage liquid fuel so well.
Yeah.
We know how to do that really well.
That you could use the generator that is running off the gasifier to power the rest of the compressor and stuff to do your liquid gas.
Oh, that's a good point, Gil. Yeah, I could see that.
Well, how about feces then? I'm reading a thing here on feces saying that could be the post-apocalypse power.
Oh, you can. One of the great things about poo is you can make a natural gas generator, so a biodigester. So you can make a lot of natural methane from all sorts of poo you can harvest, and that can run, furnaces.
Biogas reclamation.
Yeah, it's a really good thing to look at to do. There's actually a lot of cities that use that, and landfills that have become bioreactive for making natural gas to spin turbines and other stuff. I really like the idea of having a natural gas supply like that for cooking on and everything else.
It says that one dairy farm, if you have one dairy farm with all the cows doing their poo thing, that would generate enough feces to power 1,000 homes.
Let's go to New York.
That's what it says. I'm just reading it from what it says.
Something else to consider too with the production of methane. My father-in-law's travel trailer had the natural gas. Had the liquid propane gas lamps in there, just like you have your camping lanterns, run on the propane. He had there was lamps inside the trailer that you turn on the valve and then light it up, and that way you had it's old-fashioned gas light in the streets. We had the guy going around lighting all the gas lamps. But you could do the same thing for your home. Problem is the fact that if it's not odorized and you develop a leak, you could have a big problem.
Actually, one thing I've always, we stock oil lamps, we have candles, we have all this other stuff. A lot of those things I'm not going to use until the very end if I have to, because the number of chances for fire accidentally knocking stuff over is just huge. The fire risk on those things is going to be so high. And I think a lot of people that don't have fixtures already set up, to contain these things and managed well, that you can set things up and let the candles burn in and they're very well contained. I think you're going to have a ton of people lose their houses to fire from accidentally knocking over candles, knocking over lanterns, all sorts of stuff like that.
On candles, when I was teaching teaching the CERT program and then one of the modules talking about lighting and stuff like that, and causes of fires was the candles. Everyone thinks of candles as the little skinny, the narrow taper candles and stuff to use. Go to I hate to say it, Walmart, and get those big 9-inch round candles that have 5 wicks in it that are only 8 inches tall, so it's wider around than it is tall. You can't knock those over too well. They're really stable. And if you're going to make your own candles, you need to make a wide candle. In fact, that's one of the emergency preparedness things on my list in the video I did yesterday on the videos coming up for this winter, is how to make emergency candles that are safe. And different things I've worked on, working with the CERT program, the Scouts, and of course where I used to work at Homeland Security with FEMA. Right. So there's always alternative, safer ways than the nice, pretty looking stuff. Some of the safest stuff is, I hate to say it, but ugly.
Yeah.
One of the things I found is at the dollar store, they got those 99-cent Catholic candles. And they're long-term emergency candles, essentially, just with a painting of a Catholic symbol on it. And you can get them for $1, and they last, I think, 20 hours or more. Maybe they're 100 hours. And you can stock up for relatively cheap. They're not a super wide base, but you could probably build something. Like you could probably make a wood box that could be grated or slotted, like an egg crate kind of thing. And that way,
put several of them in there.
Right. Plus, then it puts out heat. The other thing that we looked into when we went to Layman's was my wife bought an Aladdin candle or an Aladdin kerosene lantern. And if you look into those actually are designed to put out about 8,000 BTUs of heat and provide you actual good reading light too. A little pricey, but a lot. It's worth it. It's more of a kind of an heirloom kind of thing that you can pass down eventually too.
Something else to consider with candles, look into beeswax candles because burns at a hotter BTU. Like you typically get about 1,000 BTUs off of beeswax versus 7,000 to 8,000 BTUs off of paraffin. It's going to burn longer, and it's easier to reproduce with beehives than it is with paraffin wax. So, trying to get off of the petroleum-based stuff and trying to go with natural products is going to be something to consider.
On a side note, that with the beeswax, my grandmother used to use beeswax on her jellies to seal them instead of paraffin wax.
Yeah, that was a very old timer thing, and stuff. It's pretty neat. Just be careful. And you know how like if it would crack and it'd mold, they would scoop out the moldy part and eat the rest.
Yep.
I still do that. I get a piece of cheese in the refrigerator that's got mold on it. I cut the mold off, eat the rest.
The other power thing that and this is an interesting thing that someone had suggested when I was someone had suggested to somebody else on their channel. The water pump that is what's it called? Just lost the name of it. Basically, where the water comes downhill and it goes to a couple check valves and it goes click, and it pumps a smaller amount of water up higher than what the original water is coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah. They basically they're talking about, well, if you get several of those going on, you just pump water up really high and then you use that water to turn a water turbine.
Yeah, I was just reading something about that not real long ago.
It's not going to give you a lot of power. It's going to take forever.
All the way down here at the bottom of the hill from your house, and put in that thing you were talking about into some sort of mixture of pipes and stuff that go up the hill. It doesn't take much water, but eventually it'll go all the way up that pipe. After that pipe gets full once, it'll keep running no matter what. And then after it gets up at the top, you can use it for washing or cleaning or generating more power or whatever you need it for. But yeah, I was reading something about that.
I'm trying to look in my videos because I captured one of the other videos on it. Here, I'm trying to find the name of it.
Ram pump.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Uncle Al wrote it down for us.
We're building
Uncle
one.
Al. Yeah.
Because we got a pond, about an acre or two size pond, and we're going to use the ram pump to bring water up to the garden and then fill an overflow, and then that way that's you're not hauling water for all the animals.
Oh, you don't want to haul water every day? Waste hours? So much fun.
No.
Oh, you can set up some sort of bicycle system down below in the creek. Somebody be down there pumping it by bicycling. Pumping it up the hill.
Will, thanks for mentioning bicycles. I have converted 2 exercise bikes with single wire alternators on them that I can put the grandkids on to help charge up the battery that's going to run their video player and the little TV for them. So they want to watch a video, they got to pedal.
They got to pedal to do it. How bad you want to play?
How bad you want to play that Xbox? But yeah, I made a couple of those because the exercise bikes had malfunctioned, and so I just gutted them out, stripped them down, welded some brackets on it, and put some single wire alternators on there.
That'd be nice too for
Anthony,
using.
Anthony, I haven't heard your voice at all tonight. What have you got to say on the situation?
Well,
Yeah. Speak.
I've been writing down stuff the entire time on this little note card. I wanted to try to hit a few points here.
What is this, study hall?
Well, everybody was going to be going in a rut. I don't want to interrupt the motion of the ocean, if you know what I'm saying. But one of the main things I really wanted to hit is light, regardless of what you believe, is a morale booster. So yeah, going back to being primitive or whatever, it's cool and everything to be able to know how to do it. But just having lights, you are going to be 1,000 times happier than the person who doesn't have lights. So that's one thing I really wanted to throw here. And it's not that hard to get a panel to charge up a battery, just to have a light, a 12-volt light for however long it can run. Another thing is we've had a taste of electricity now, and you can't really go backwards from that. I mean, you can, but everyone knows what electricity is like, so they're going to be yearning for that. So as much as it's nice to be able to say, hey, we've as a species have been around before electricity for thousands and thousands of years. Yeah, it's cool, but they never had it, so they don't know what they're missing. It's kind of like the people that didn't eat chocolate because they never knew what it tasted like, and now they have it and they want it. They're going to want to obviously get some chocolate or some sugar.
Well,
so the whole point of
Anthony. Sorry, I was just going to say is, don't forget, in the past, people spent massive amounts of time making fires to provide light at night.
And that's one of the things I was leading into here was you have to think about resources and what that's going to do to you. Calories are going to be hard to come by. And depending on the SHTF scenario, you're going to want to make your life as easy as possible. So if you can have an electric motor to pump your water so you don't have to, or to say, irrigate your garden, or to do something as simple as one simple thing that you cannot have to do now is spin a rotisserie to cook your food, whatever. It's going to make things 10 times easier than the next guy. So
and the washing machine.
Exactly. Yeah. And the one thing we were talking about when we said if you have electricity, it's going to come back and hurt you because people are going to notice you have electricity. Well, let me tell you a little secret. When you deploy or you go somewhere for out in the middle of nowhere, you can smell food from miles. So if you're worried about someone seeing your lights, if you're cooking a can of beans, you're going to smell it for miles. See, human nose is very, very good. So they're going to know you're around regardless if you have food. So if you have lights, it's kind of one thing or another. You're going to want to hide everything. You're not going to have a generator going at nighttime when you can hear for literally 5 miles away. But having a little bit of light from a solar panel isn't really going to hurt you. So, and the last thing I wanted to hit was you can always retrofit DC motors from treadmills because those are a little bit easier to spin and create power versus an alternator, which requires a lot of RPMs to make any bit of juice. Alternators require a lot of RPMs. Generator or DC motors from a treadmill, it can be retrofitted, and you don't need to spin it that much to make power. That's all I got to say.
Good point there on the treadmill motor. I'll have to look into that.
Lots and lots of DC, lots and lots of motors can be made into a DC generator. I need to make a video on that. I need to
write it down.
Explaining that one.
All right, everybody's got 2 minutes to wrap it up, and we're going to start with Dan. That's you, Dan.
I think I'm gonna turn to the panel because I really don't have a whole lot to say at the moment. It's been good to listen to. So
2 minutes to wrap up your end of it for tonight.
Me? Okay. Yeah, my biggest thing is I would just honestly, I'll put a plug out for U.S. Solar Mount with Eric Pipkin. I did a small kind of review on different power sources, and if you honestly want to run your whole house or even part of your house, he'd be the guy to talk to, and he's kind of a no BS kind of guy, and he's already a prepper mindset, so he knows preppers and kind of knows how to deal with you, like our kind of people. So he's not thinking you're nuts.
All right, Reed.
I would say learn as much as you can about solar power and other electrical systems, and particularly one thing I keep advocating is 12-volt solar. I know it sounds crazy, But 12-volt solar and 12-volt electrical is in every car. We can salvage those cars and parts to make lights, actuators for motors and greenhouses, all sorts of stuff. They are really helpful. I mean, they're localized to your area. You're not going to be sending the electricity miles away. But, I mean, there's cars everywhere. We can take those things apart and make some pretty cool stuff with them.
Anthony?
Basically, yeah, just the DC motor thing is one of the really big ones. Working on cars, I know that you can easily take some of those motors, like your seat motor or whatever, and be able to convert those into making power backwards. That's basically what a generator is. It's just a DC motor backwards. So learning how to do something like that, and Reed's talking about making a video on it, which is aces, because I would really like to know your mind inset, your inner workings on how to do that. And also don't forget about propane. Gasoline and diesel can expire. Propane's kind of as good as it's going to be with whatever container you got in there. So I live next to like one of the biggest propane hubs in South Carolina. So if I'm going to be having any kind of generator, having a propane generator will be very good for me, because I can walk 2 miles and get as much propane as possible. So I'm good to go, unless there's some sort of check valve leak and it all leaks out, and we'll all die anyway, because it'll probably torch my town. But yeah, that's all I got.
Boom in South Carolina, we know what happened.
You used your 2 minutes up.
Okay. All right. So first off, I kind of agree with Reed on the 12-volt solar systems, but I would advocate a dual voltage system. 110 for certain things that are 110, like a microwave. If you can't live without a microwave, but all your lighting and your basic stuff should, they got 12-volt LED lights now. I mean, they're great. The other thing too, on the like Anthony was saying about the propane never going bad and running a generator on propane, you can also run a propane powered generator on, use it for like a compressed, make your own compressed gas for it to run it on it, methane, other things. Think outside the box, people. There are more ways of doing things than what we've been taught to do. Learn. I would I would suggest that everybody take one college class, basic DC voltage. You'll learn a lot, and DC voltage is probably going to be what's going to coming back.
Yeah, you're probably right. All right, I want to thank everybody for coming in tonight. Hope you learned something. We learned something as well. Gonna have to sign out because I can't run over tonight. I have a doctor's appointment in the morning. So, till next time, you guys.
See you, everyone.
All right.
Take care.
Take care, guys.
Let me find my way out of here. There we go.
Hey, Reed.
Hmm.
Go to my channel and you'll see my email.